Hello and happy Friday. Welcome to Guerilla Sports Off Ice. This episode is brought to you by our great friends over at Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a lower interest rate and get you a better monthly payment. Go to trustedamerican.com. See how much money they can help you save today. Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hello, welcome in. Guerilla Sports Off Ice, Jesse Montano, Meghan Angley, Chloe behind the glass today, running our show, making sure you guys can see us and hear us. Whew. What time did you get to sleep last night?
I actually don't want to say. It was extremely late because I'm running off adrenaline after games.
Well, this is why I'm asking. Yeah,
It was 3.
That's one thing that people in my family, my wife, people just like, they give me a hard time for it because you come home from these games super late and you don't go to bed right away. Because I think there's a lot of people that don't fully realize, like, a lot of our job on a game night, like, really spikes right at the end of the night. We're running around, we're going here, we're going there, we're talking this. And especially if it's any type of exciting game, interesting finish, if there's a storyline like there was yesterday with Scott Wedgewood, all of that, can be hard to go home and just go to bed. I remember, like, during the playoffs, this was a big problem for me because the playoff schedule is so busy. There's so much going on every single day. Especially, like when we were in Winnipeg this past April, like, you're traveling, you're getting on planes, you're taking flights, you're driving, whatever it is. And like, you get done with these games, like, all right, perfect. I got to be at the airport at 6 a.m. And then you just sit there in your hotel room wide awake until 2:30 or 3.
Yeah.
Trying to do stuff on your laptop, or you get packed or whatever. These games, there's an adrenaline spike at the end of it.
Well, especially such a buzzer beater like last night,
Right.
with the context of the game, like you mentioned. It's hard to get to sleep, and there's bigger picture problems with a game like last night that extend beyond the outcome, beyond a goal against, that linger in your mind.
Mhm.
And for me personally, I ruminate
Mhm.
over how much it troubles me, and it's been troubling me so much today.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's funny because we really do, you get a big rush of adrenaline, not only because of the game and not only because of the way that the game went, but like I said, we go down to the locker room and we've got to run around and you get your sound, and it's not a short walk to where Jared Bednar is. You got to get down there quick after the game. So you do that, and then you and I got to jump on camera right after that and do our own takes and answer questions and all that. So no judgment here for you not falling asleep till 3:30. That's such is life. Such is the life of this job. I actually got home. My wife was going to bed. I went and said goodnight, and then I was like, I'll be in here in a couple hours. Like, I don't know.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
My body will decide.
I'll be here when I'm here. We do have a lot to unpack, and Megan, I do think we are going to spend pretty much all of today's show unpacking a lot of what we saw yesterday. And yes, I'm sure we will talk a decent amount about the result of the game, and because it was exciting and the way that the Avs got there. I think there's a lot to talk about with it, both positive and negative. That another great comeback. Another comeback win. You know what I mean? Like, there's two different sides we can look at it. We're going to talk about all that. We're going to get into the Scott Wedgewood situation, not just the fact that he was injured, not just that they scored a goal, but from the player's safety perspective, which is what Jared Bednar, I think you and I are both in alignment, was rightfully upset about. And truthfully, I haven't found one single person on the internet or otherwise who has said that they disagree with what Jared Bednar was saying. Like, this seems to me like something, and we'll circle back to this, but this does seem to me, Megan, like something that is pretty universally agreed upon.
Unfortunately, I have stumbled into the wrong corners of the
Oh,
internet.
oh no.
Because I went outside of the Avs fan base for this one, and there are people who don't necessarily agree with Jared Bednar's take on it. They don't agree that it is clear that Scott Wedgewood is seriously injured.
That's so funny.
And it's frustrating to me. And then their definition of what warrants a serious injury has also been called into question across the internet. And the trouble is, it's not clearly defined in the NHL rulebook. So nobody's correct. People talking out of their butt that there are these parameters that would make a serious injury on the ice are wrong. It's not outlined at all in the NHL rulebook.
And where that's, in my opinion, the most glaring was the example that Jared Bednar brought up last night when Matt Calvert took a puck to the head and was bleeding out of his ear on the ice. I think it was, 3 seasons ago? And play continued on.
There are some rules about blood in the injury portion of the rule book, but they're still a little bit unclear.
Well, and to Jared Bednar's point, and we'll circle back to this because I want to talk about a couple other things first, because I think you and I are going to have the most to say on this.
We got to wait.
But the last thing that I'll put is to your point about it says blood. Jared Bednar's whole point last night was like, well, you guys throw all that out anyways. Like the officials.
It's still inconsistent.
Right. Blood, no blood, injury, serious injury, down on the ice, trying to get up. Like the rules are all over the place.
I actually saw somebody say, well, no one's died from a leg injury. And so now the threshold for what warrants a serious enough injury to stop play is mortal injury.
Right.
Oh, gosh.
Well, and okay.
We've lost the plot.
We'll come back to it because I also like Jared Bednar's point of like, where do you draw the line?
Death,
for
apparently.
how long? Right. So if you're not actively dying, just let the play keep going until you get a natural whistle. There is plenty more to unpack from that game from last night, and let's start there. And then we will hear from Jared Bednar. We'll play his full comments at some point here on the show. But I do want to start, Megan, just your overall thoughts on the fact that, yes, it was great that they were able to, for the Avalanche, it was great that they were able to come back, get a win, find a way to get it tied, kind of a galvanizing moment for the team, the arena, everybody that was there, and the team comes together and gets the job done for Scott Wedgewood. But you've got to be a little bit disappointed. If you're taking a true step back and look at this, you've got to be a little bit disappointed that, again, against the Buffalo Sabres, you find yourself down by 3 goals or more at one point in this game.
It is a little frustrating because there's a handful of games like it this season, to include the other Buffalo game, which you bring up. But you also pointed out the San Jose game and the comeback that was needed to launch in that win. And I think it is important to kind of key in then on some of those games where the Avs appeared to maybe play down a little bit to weaker teams. And it's because you ask any player and they would tell you, you shouldn't underestimate any team,
right?
No matter who's coming into play in this building in particular, that's a team that we want to beat. That's the bottom line, whether they're the best team in the East or the top of the league Winnipeg Jets or the San Jose Sharks on the road or hosting the Buffalo Sabres after what was a really challenging game back in Buffalo here recently. It should all be played similarly, right? With that same hunger to win. And so I think there's rightfully some frustration there, but I also think proportionate to the games that they have won, especially in spite of some of the injuries, it's still more positive than it is negative. And so I don't want to come down too hard on them for maybe falling a little flatter than I would have liked to see through 40 minutes, going down 3-0 bad, but they exit the second period and it's a 3-1 game. It's still within their reach, but you hate that they put themselves in that position. And obviously things drastically change after the Scott Wedgewood injury. And I think that's where Taves has a very good point, that he wants to see that spark come from somewhere else, right? Come from within and earlier in the game and not be prompted by something so unfortunate. And I think that's a pretty good point too. But I still, bigger picture, we're almost at the halfway point in this season. We all know how that first 10-game stretch started for this team, and now they're approaching game 40, and they're third in the Central, just 4 points back of the Minnesota Wild. They just won their 6th game in a row, 8-2-0 in their last 10 games. I find it hard to key in on that too critically then. As long as they continue to find ways to win And hopefully to eliminate some of the games then that now feel like they're an isolated sample of you did play down to your competition a little bit. As long as that continues to be more of an infrequent thing for them, I don't mind the learning lessons that come from it as long as they learn.
So I'll come down hard on him.
Yeah, get him.
Because and look, I agree with the overall sentiment of like there's a lot of good being done with this team right now, and there's a lot of positives to take out of not just last night, but the overall stretch of hockey that they're on right now. But it's the word that you use there, consistency, and that was the issue that I had with last night. You are doing so many good things as a team. There's new life that's been breathed into this group. You just went out and played an outstanding game against the best team in the league. The teams to me that are the true elite, the cream of the crop, the ones that survive at the end of the season and get down to those last couple of teams are the ones who can do it consistently, night in, night out. They know who they are. They understand their process. And what's the Logan O'Connor line that you and I bring up all the time? They don't always have their A game, but they got their B game. There was just too much of that game last night where I looked at you, I said, it's just meh.
It started as a C game.
It started as a C game. And that's the stuff where it felt to me like it took the Wedgewood injury for them to ramp up to their B game, then quickly their A game. And you don't want a player getting injured to be what is the thing that can get your team going. I just want to see them start settling into some more consistency and the off nights being those B games where, yeah, you're going to lose. It's the NHL. It's 82 game seasons. And to your point, Megan, there is no easy team in this league. Yeah. These are all NHL clubs. These are all professional hockey players. There are no easy teams. But the Avs do need to start settling into the part of the season here where they are taking care of business on the nights that they need to do so. And they're coming out and the habits are right and the details are sharp. And again, they need to start fluctuating between A and B games. And there's just been too much this season. And yes, it's different rosters and different goaltenders and injuries. All of that context is valid. But this year's team has not earned the right yet to have the bad periods and the slow start. They're still recovering from that too much from the first 10-game segments of this season, in my opinion. Because, for me, this group is still trying to prove that wasn't who they were. This is who they are. And when you have these types of lulls, especially against a team like Buffalo last night, where you knew how it went the first time, and you had a chance to come out last night and just make a statement early. That was a fluke. We are a top team in the league, and we take care of business. And the fact that it, again, had to turn into a miraculous 4-goal third period comeback, it's great. If you're the Avs, it's great. You needed the points. Doesn't matter how you got them. The 60-minute effort needs to start looking more consistent.
I think calling for them to sharpen it up is completely fair. But I also think they're being punished for some of those poor segments earlier in the season because they did just win their 6th straight game. And so you look at the last 10-game stretch, and it has been really good hockey. And so that's when you can start looking through a more critical lens than ever before. That I think is fair. But I also think they're in pretty good shape. But they have to keep moving forward.
Yes.
And that's what makes this challenging because they're really not getting any more reinforcement. They've lost Val Nichushkin, Scott Wedgewood. The picture around him isn't inherently negative. Week to week, obviously concerning. We just don't know enough.
Yeah.
The concern is high ankle sprain, but they have not been able to pinpoint if it's a little lower in the foot. Yeah. What are we looking at? Well, obviously, high ankle would be worst case scenario.
Yep.
So we're not in that room, but we also don't know if we're in that room or not.
Well, and the fact that Evan Rowell did tweet out, he saw him leaving the arena.
In the boot,
on his own 2 feet. I think that's encouraging.
Well,
as encouraging as that can be.
Now that he's not in a boot, to be clear. So today at practice, completely bare-legged.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, okay. I saw ankle.
All right. Hey, you know me. I love
no
some
boot,
ankle.
No brace, no crutch, nothing. So great to see that.
No, for sure. And it definitely, like you said, he's going to miss some time. We'll likely see Trent Miner or maybe Mandolisi recalled here.
It was Miner.
It was Miner. Okay, that makes sense. Yep. Because I imagine that's a guy that you may need to get in some games or a game here and there. And I think they're more comfortable with Miner. But, that's fine. That's fine. He can be out for a couple weeks. couple starts for, Trent Miner, get him that experience.
I would like to see that for him.
I'd like to see him get a start, assuming Wedgewood's going to miss more than a week.
Back-to-back coming up.
Okay,
so,
and Jared Bednar did talk about that today.
Exactly. That's how he plans to handle the goalie
I've been
rotation.
in meetings all morning. Megan was at practice. I don't know if you can tell.
It's okay. Like, these people are probably wanting to know these same exact things. So that's how he plans to handle the goalie rotation moving forward. Miner's been recalled. He'll back up Blackwood. Blackwood will get the majority starts here moving forward, but there is a back-to-back coming up, and Trent Miner will get one of those games.
Which I think is good. And hey, we're back to talking about developing goalies, and Trent Miner's been here for a long time. And so
he's still young.
He's moving up. He's progressing. Maybe even as recently as a year and a half ago, you didn't know if he would ever even make it out of the E.
Yes.
And here he is as a starter in the American League and the preferred call-up for the NHL club. So, if he gets some starts, he gets some starts. I think that's good for him. You can let Scott Wedgewood take a month to feel better, especially with that Four Nations break coming up about a month from now. You're fine. And I am with you that, like, they're in a good spot. Given where they are right now at the start of January, I actually think you feel really good about where you're at, given how everything started. Given what I was saying about those segments early on, I still just think my area of criticism from last night comes from the fact of this iteration of the Avs still has too much to prove to be going through 40 minutes of a game against the Buffalo Sabres, just kind of a stinker. I even looked at you at one point and I said, they're not doing anything with the puck. And you said they're making a great first pass, and then, like, that's just kind of it.
No, they were not managing the puck well. Offensively, in terms of creation, nothing meaningful. And it was funny, though, right as I was saying,
that's right.
Ross Colton scored at the start of the third period. So that is kind of when the tide turned. Also, Mandolese, just an update, is hurt for the Eagles. So the depth chart for goaltending is a little dicey right now. It was classified as week to week, but he's begun traveling with the team here recently. So Mandolese hopefully closer to return, but not an option for the Avs. So the depth chart really falls off after Miner. So it's a little grim, but I love what Miner's been doing with the Eagles. So I'm excited to see him get a game.
Excited to see it. Let's talk a little bit about Jonathan Drouin. What a goal for him. What a moment for him, given the way that this season has gone for him. 9th game last night. Single digits still to score a goal in that big of a moment. And it just felt a little bit poetic that it comes on a beautiful feed from Nathan MacKinnon.
In the bumper, to the bumper spot where Jonathan Drouin has gotten to sort of resume his duties there on the top power play unit. And there's a reason for that, the chemistry that exists between those two players. And kind of similarly, Drouin gets elevated to the top line because the top line was struggling a little bit. And the second line had great possession numbers between Colton and Middlestat. And so Lehkonen and Drouin make that switch, in part because in the short bursts I've seen of Drouin since returning, he has been, it's such a difference maker. It's so clear to me the difference in, seeing a Casey Middlestat who has been struggling a little bit to find his game. There are so many similarities between these players, and seeing Drouin come back and do the things that I've wanted to see Casey Middlestat doing immediately after missing time, it gives me a greater appreciation for what Jonathan Drouin does, just in terms of his playmaking and his vision. It complements Nathan MacKinnon so well, but truly any line that he's on. And so there were things that he was doing below the goal line that I wanted to see Middlestat doing more of. And I started to see it as soon as last night's game, And so Drouin getting, though, that kind of in-game promotion and opportunity to the top line and being utilized in big minutes in the final seconds of a period where they're just desperately searching for the tying goal speaks to who he is as a player and how he's valued in this organization, because it takes a lot of good players time to ramp back up to game speed, Val Nichushkin included, but to still be great even when he's probably still finding his stride, I think is such a reflection of who he is. And there's still such a future for Jonathan Drouin on this team, despite having missed time and maybe not enough information around the season he could have had. The little we've seen is pretty darn good.
Well, and, one of the things that I've talked with him about, even the rare opportunities that we've been able to talk to Jonathan Drouin this year, is the ramping back up, getting back to full speed, taking that contact, being able to handle the pace of an NHL game shift, having that pressure bearing down on you. And for him to be able to get his game back in order quick enough that Jared Bednar trusts, which is a big thing we talk about all the time with Jared Bednar, trusted him to go out late in a game when the intensity is at its highest, the pace is at its quickest, for him to say, yes, Jonathan Drouin, go out there and make a play. Like you said, I think that just says a lot about the way that Jonathan Drouin prepared while he was out. And while he, to make sure that when I come back in the lineup, I can be as effective as possible. I can contribute as quickly as possible. And I don't need 2 weeks to get back up to game speed. No, I'm ready to jump in right now. 7 games so far this season, 3 goals, 8 points for Jonathan Drouin. So to your point, very limited, off to a really good start.
Huge difference maker when he's in the lineup. And where I see some of the immediate returns of having Jonathan Drouin back is in his own end on the breakout, because he is so smart. He is able to find safer, but also tricky to find passes off to teammates to get the puck out of their own end.
He's so creative.
And then the pass entry to help set up teammates to enter the zone. Now, establishing it last night was difficult for them, but it wasn't Jonathan Drouin's fault. He was doing as much as he could to give them the best opportunity to enter. And those are just little things that do make a huge difference. And if they're not managing the puck well as a 5-man unit, then it isn't going to be as meaningful in the ozone. But it starts with a player like Drouin being able to help get them there.
You guys talked to Drouin this morning. Should we hear what he had to say?
We can.
Was there?
It was very short-lived. It was kind of a random assortment of topics. So I probably would have played the Logan O'Connor interview instead.
We can do that as well. Let's talk actually about LOC before we get to that. Because he was actually one of the first players that, coming out of the Scott Wedgewood injury, I really noticed. I thought he set the tone, because he was on that penalty kill that came out of the failed challenge for Jared Bednar and the Avalanche, which we all kind of figured was just an FU challenge. Go watch it again kind of thing. Think
about your decisions.
Exactly. And I thought Logan O'Connor came out and set the tone for the way that the Avs were going to respond. Almost peeled out on a breakaway for himself right at the start of the kill, and then does eventually get sprung on a mini-ish breakaway, draws a penalty later on the penalty kill, which eventually snowballed and led to the 5-on-3 that Mikko Rantanen scores on to kind of spark the comeback. That, to me, was vintage Logan O'Connor.
I think to be able to transform the frustration of the failed challenge and then a kill into now a man advantage opportunity speaks to the maturity of the group to not become undisciplined in that moment, and to see the way in which a player like Logan O'Connor can almost single-handedly embody that energy and transmute it into something productive on ice speaks to who he is as a player and why there's so much. The penalty kill wasn't great to start the game last night. And honestly, I just think Buffalo did a lot of the right things. I don't even look at the kill super critically.
Yeah.
I have my little nitpicks, but for them to have that kind of a comeback on the kill, specifically too, when they needed it most, because there is that frustration of feeling wronged in that moment, having seen your teammate now leave the game due to a pretty serious injury.
Right.
I think it says a lot to be able to make that into something productive.
Well, and not just, we saw Ross Colton last night channel frustration in the wrong way.
Yeah, immediately, right? Immediately. And I get the frustration. Zucker was giving it to him, and that's to your point. You're right. And I think Ross Colton was another player who also kind of had a little mini comeback inside the game, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like after that penalty, I think recognized how that hurt the team and decided the way he wanted to leave a fingerprint on that game was to help them in a positive way. And so I think he was another, like an O'Connor, who used the high energy born from a bad moment to make himself better.
Well, and I don't want to suddenly turn this into me beating up on Ross Colton, because I agree with what you just said. but like it's actually even funny, right? Because to me, his reaction like that earlier in the game goes back a little bit to what I was talking about why I didn't like so much of that game last night for the Avalanche.
Totally.
Is like that's one of those moments where it's like you've got to have better control on your emotions. And I think it was embodied through Ross Colton, but I actually think it was reflective of the entire group.
Totally.
They were frustrated. They were doing things out of character. They're forcing pucks. I mean, how many times did you and I sit there and be like, are they just going to keep firing pucks into bodies and shin pads and pants?
There were some weird passes too.
Weird passes, weird shot selection.
Who was that too?
Yes.
Taves.
The Taves.
But it wasn't just Taves. There was another later in the game, and we joked that he was going for the Taves.
Yeah.
And it became now a verb.
Right.
And you know what? Devon Taves also had a comeback of his own.
Right.
So,
but like that really is that may actually even tell the story better than the way I was trying to put it earlier. Just like that's the stuff that, when you get later into the season,
right,
and you get down to the real nitty gritty, and you're into the playoffs and all, that's the stuff that will cost you your season. And starts like what the Avs had last night will cost you your season late in the year, come playoff time. And that's where it's just, we are at the halfway point. So yes, there's still a lot of hockey left to be played, but Megan, I feel like you and I blinked and now we're here at the halfway point.
Mm-hmm.
That hockey's got to start getting cleaned up now.
And I want to affirm that because you're right. It's now a little more established that they're capable of winning these games, even if they're going to be down guys every game.
Which is great.
It is great. But now that they've sort of set this standard, like, okay, you're capable of winning even with guys out of the lineup, now it's no longer an excuse.
Yep.
Now the amount of injuries is no longer an excuse. And so you want to see them start to sharpen the details even more. It's what's brought them success lately.
Yep.
They deserve a shout out. They have made strides, huge improvements observationally in a lot of different ways.
Totally.
But there's still room to grow. To make life easier for themselves, truthfully.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Jared uses the phrase all the time, if we want to get where we want to be, and then he'll fill in the rest of it. But for me, it's yes, if you want to get where you want to be, those habits got to start now. You had your leeway, you had your runway of up and down and inconsistent lineup and injuries, and where Jared Bednar even admitted, like, yeah, I'm evaluating the team differently right now than I normally would. We still want the results, obviously, but there's a lot of context here. I'm with you. I think we are kind of moving beyond that point, and they are starting to establish that they are just a good team that can beat anybody on any night. And now you got the goaltending, you're getting the saves. There really shouldn't be any reason why there's an excuse or why there's a different standard. And you want to see that start settling in now.
That was Taves after the Jets game, right? We can chase anyone down in the division.
Yes.
And I loved that attitude. And I think it is important for the team to embody that and execute, because there was a lot of people underestimating the Avs to start this year. Who's even on the Avs to start? Who are these guys? Do they even have depth? What's the depth? And I think they've turned a corner on that. And so now it's time to put the league on notice in a lot of different ways. And it's probably still not going to be easy. I don't think there's any easy wins in this league generally.
No.
But you look at the talent, a player like Taves, like I'm not talking just Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Mikko Rantanen, but to see Taves sort of return to form after not having been at 100% at any point this year is significant. Josh Manson also not at 100%, taking maintenance days, all a part of his return to play plan, but still, this is a player who's not 100%. He gets to be a difference maker. And I think seeing some of these guys that are part of that cup core step up outside of the McKinnons of the world is so important for this team.
It is. No, you're 100% right. Like the big guys drove the bus last night, but that hasn't been needed every night in this 6-game winning streak. And they'll go for 7 tomorrow against Montreal. And while the Avs are going for 7, why don't you go for 7, Brew? Stop in to 7 Brew in their newest location up in Firestone, Colorado. 7 Brew is a one-of-a-kind drive-through and walk-up experience with a fast and friendly crew that is waiting to serve you. From rich, bold coffee to refreshing energy drinks, smoothies, teas, and more. We also saw milkshakes on the website the other day when we were going through. There's a perfect drink for everyone. With over 20,000 flavor combinations at 7 Brew, they believe in cultivating kindness with every cup, and their fully customizable menu is just the beginning. Before you hit the road, power up with 7 Brew in Firestone and experience the coffee revolution. Do also want to remind you guys about our great friends over at Landmark Lincoln. Go to landmarklincoln.com right now and check out the all-new 2024 Lincoln Corsair GT plug-in hybrid. Head on over to landmarklincoln.com to check out the latest offers and incentives, including incredible tax incentives on the all-new Corsair GT plug-in hybrids. Go to landmarklincoln.com or stop into the #1 Lincoln dealer in Colorado to see if you can qualify for no payments for up to 90 days. Again, that's landmarklincoln.com or stop in at the corner of Broadway and Bellevue today and see why they've been Colorado's trusted Lincoln dealer since 1911. The Avs will go for win number 7 in a row tomorrow night against Montreal. And where I was going with that, there are no easy wins in the NHL. You also mentioned putting the league on notice. The Avs are in the middle of a stretch here where, and again, another part of my disappointment with last night was you had a chance to come out and just bury a team that you had to make a miraculous comeback on, bury them, put the league on notice and say, we're done with this. You find a way to get the win. But look, the Avs are in the middle of a soft part of their schedule here. String together these wins. Beat the teams that you should beat.
Well, it's like a little soft, but then it also gets hard with, is it Florida coming up?
Yes. Yep. Some tough games sprinkled in there.
No, exactly. And that's why you then want to win the games that you definitely should win.
Yep.
And then make it competitive in the ones that are going to be a little bit challenging. And I think Montreal is a team, they've won their last 3. And so of this recent stretch, I think they're 7-3-0 in their last 10. And so you don't want to underestimate Montreal. Like, it's a team that
no, they're playing well
on the whole of the season has some vulnerabilities, but they're playing well right now. And the Avs at home, I think, is where they're looking to improve. They've done a lot of great things on the road recently. Mm-hmm. And Logan O'Connor kind of talked about that today, how he looked at this game and how much the crowd impacted the way that the team played too, that it wasn't just their own personal frustrations and what had happened to Wedgewood, but also having the crowd get into it so much. I think he was just sort of using that as a springboard for how they can leverage the crowd passion at home moving forward. There's a lot of games at home over the course of this month. Mm-hmm. I do not only want to see the team try to string together more consistent hockey over a 60, you know, 60, full 60. You get it.
I know where you're going.
But I also love this, like, we want to play with a little more pride at home in front of our passionate fans, and we want to use the passionate fans to our advantage.
Mikko Rantanen brought up the fans last night unprompted. When I was first talking to him about, you know, maybe not going the way that they drew it up, but still getting the result and the comeback. And the first thing he said is that the best thing was the crowd. Felt like a playoff crowd. Megan, I'm going to I want to go to Jerry Bednar from last night, and I want to play the whole thing. But first, we got a super chat in here that we're going to go to from Drew Lounsbury, $27.99 Canadian. Drew,
thank you,
our
so
guy.
much,
Thank you so much. Tuning in late, so you might have mentioned it. These refs need to be held accountable. Next game, Luxmore refs the Avs. I'm taking a clapper at him, saying it was a dump in, and then ask him why he blew it dead this time. Look, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about the refs' accountability issue with this conversation as well. Because I think this is a large part of people's frustration. Isn't even whether you think the ref got it right or wrong, if you think it was the right call or it shouldn't have been goalie interference, it should have been goalie interference, the whistle should have blown. The issue, I think every hockey fan has is the lack of accountability. I made the comment last night. I would love to hear from TJ Luxmore after that game, not because I want to grill him, not because I want to get him with, oh, you said that. They have an explanation. You know what I mean? Like, they get together and they conference, they talk about stuff, they communicate with the coaches, they go into the officials' dressing room at intermissions and after the game together. Like, they all talk about it. And I would just love if we had, Corey Massasak's the chapter president here. In the NFL, one pool reporter goes and speaks to the officials if they want. I don't get why in a game like last night, we couldn't all get together with one pool reporter and say, can you go down there and ask what they saw? What was the reason for not blowing the whistle? And just make the refs put that on record. I do feel like officials get to just kind of make whatever calls they want to make, do whatever they want to do, stuff that can at times have massive implications on the outcome of the game. And then it's just like, that was what we did. Every other person, GM, coach, player, goalie, they all have to answer for their decisions. Why don't officials have to at least give the explanation?
My issue, not with asking for officials to be held a little bit accountable, and this isn't because I don't have an issue with TJ Luxmore and his call. I just don't think that there's very much he could have said last night that would have addressed the real issue here, and that's the fact that by the way the rule is written, something so serious is subjective without repercussion. Because of the way the rule is written, TJ Luxmore doesn't have to blow that whistle, but he can. And there's no consequence for getting that wrong. There's no consequence for if you don't blow a whistle and a player is actually seriously injured and you just made the wrong judgment, there's no consequence. Because of the way the rule is written. Luxmore is protected by the rule. And so in a way, this rule not only exposes players, and they're extremely vulnerable because of the lack of clarity and gray area that exists in allowing it to be subjective, and then not outlining any language around what does warrant a serious injury. There's no concern then for the ref to make the right call in that situation, because if he doesn't, again, there's no consequence. And so he's protected in a sense, but he's also exposed and vulnerable because then he is the scapegoat who is paraded out in front of fans, viewers, media alike as the guy who made the wrong call. So even though there's no professional consequence, he is to take a little bit of backlash. It still leaves the player unprotected. And the issue then lies within the rule. And here's where I have an issue with the rule. The rule is designed as such, with goaltenders in particular, so that they don't fake an injury, so that they don't intentionally pretend to be hurt just to get a whistle in a high danger scoring opportunity. And what I'm frustrated by is if you weigh these two things alongside each other, you've got the possibility of a goaltender pretending to be injured and potentially saving a goal against, alongside a goaltender actually getting injured. And now, not only is he being delayed medical care, because there isn't a whistle and training staff can't come onto the ice, he is now exposed and vulnerable to even worse injury. Jared Bednar brought up if they had decided to feed Dahlin out high and he whipped a 105-mile-per-hour clapper at Wedgewood, he would have been lying there defenseless.
Vulnerable, very vulnerable.
That is the issue with leaving the gray area. So when you're weighing these two things alongside each other, the possibility of even more serious injury to Wedgewood because he's vulnerable alongside, well, he could have been faking it. You are saying very loudly as a league that you care more about a goalie possibly faking an injury and disallowing a goal against than a player actually getting hurt. And that sends the wrong message, because there are other ways to deter players from faking an injury after the fact. Like, all right, if you blow the play dead, err on the side of caution, blow the play dead. Or outline a lot more clearly what actually warrants a serious injury, because that's where I have a huge issue. It's left.
And
so,
sorry,
there are other ways to deter this, though. Have the goalie leave the game. Bring in the backup goaltender cold. If the goalie's really
no matter
injured,
what.
Exactly. If the goalie's really injured, or make it a delay of game. If the goalie's like, look, I'm sorry, I thought I was hurt, I think I'm okay to continue playing, make them kill a penalty.
Well, so if a player goes down injured and the play stops for the injured player, that player has to leave the ice. They don't have to necessarily go to the locker room and get, medical attention. They have to leave the ice. You cannot go down, be the reason that the whistle is blown for an injury, and then take the next shift. It's not allowed. You even have to start on the bench, and then they can change you out right away, but you cannot start the beginning of the next shift. To your point, why can't there be a rule like that? Hey, we're going to blow it dead for a goalie, but he's got to leave the game for at least, a whistle.
And that feels easy to implement and deter a goaltender from faking an injury, but it says a lot about how the league even views its own players. If they're more concerned about goalies being big baby drama queens and faking injury than they are actually protecting their goalies from serious injury.
And back to, Drew's question, that is just the part that, to me, again, because Corey wouldn't go in there and, be trying to gotcha TJ Luxmore. It's no, what did you see? There was four officials with whistle on their hands. None of them felt it was necessary to blow it while Scott Wedgewood was down. What did you see? What do you guys look for in those types of situations? And I also think there's instances where we see replays after. Refs see replays after, and it's like, ooh, that shouldn't have been a penalty. That should have been a penalty. The whistle should have blown. It shouldn't have blown, whatever. And just, give officials an opportunity to be like, yeah, we looked at it after, and that was one that we didn't get right. And that's something that'll be sent around to other officials in the league. We'll make sure we get it right going forward. And I don't think anyone would have an issue with that, because it's just saying, hey, yep, we took a look, and either we stood by it after taking a look. These are the reasons why, based on the rule book, or we looked at it and that we shouldn't have called a high stick on that. We'll make sure that gets around the league to other officials. Before we get to Jared Bednar, I did want to another super chat here from Vaguely Sober.
Oh.
Congrats on 6K subs. Yes. All of you amazing
Vaguely.
people have pushed the Guerilla Sports YouTube page over 6,000 subscriptions as of yesterday. So thank you all very, very much. And Vaguely Sober, we all know you're leading the charge on that. I believe we had your 2-month membership anniversary comment up earlier. Thank you guys all so much. I cut you off before you wanted to make one more point before I played Jared.
I just want to emphasize how the league has their priorities so wrong and how this rule is structured currently, and allowing that gray area to exist and make something kind of serious so subjective, and then have no after that. Like, all right, you've left it to the judgment of the officials, but there's no answer after that. When player safety is concerned and you claim to be a league who cares about player safety, this is just unacceptable, and your priorities are skewed if you're going to weigh a goaltender faking an injury over a goaltender actually being injured.
Well, and don't let just Megan tell you about it. Let's hear what Jared Bednar's thoughts were on all of this last night, because I believe you put it much more kindly than he did.
The referee said it wasn't blown because we put their guy into Scott. I said, I don't give a shit. He's hurt. They're standing there. He's sitting there. He's hurt. Blow the whistle. If the puck's in the net front still and they were hacking away at it and it goes in, I'd say fine. But as soon as the puck squirts to the corner, they got to blow it dead. They do it all the time for regular players because of player safety. The rule would state that we have to touch it, but they don't follow that rule. They never follow that rule. 2 games ago, we were in the offensive zone. One of their players was down in the slot, and we were passing around, and Cale Makar's coming downhill for a one-timer, and they blow it dead. Take away a scoring chance, what could be a possible extending of a lead, and they blow it because the player's laying there hurt in a shooting lane. So it's the same thing for the goalie. If he's hurt and he's not getting up, and they can evaluate that, and they're standing right there looking at it, the whistle should go. It's just that simple. It's not. Did I think it was goalie interference? No, it's not goalie interference because we bumped him in. He turned the wrong way, and we bumped into him when he went into our goalie. But when the goalie's hurt, you blow the whistle. That's what happens all the time with players in every zone. And it happened in the first period with me and Darlene. Darlene goes down, and they blow it dead because he's still down. It happened last game for us, and the game before that, and the game before that happens once a game. I bet you. And for them to just let it go, and then allow the goal is insanity to me. It's a player safety thing. If they would have loaded up Darlene for a one-timer for a 105-mile-an-hour slap shot, they're just going to let it fucking happen with our goalie down in the net? Can't do it. Can't do it. You got to blow it dead. Well, I don't know. We'll get him evaluated. He's going to miss some time.
Was that challenge a bit of a process? You said you
Yeah, it gives him another chance to do the right thing. The goal shouldn't have counted, and so, yeah, I was mad, so we just did it.
Everyone is still worth 2 points, but did that one feel a little better just given everything leading up to it?
It felt great because our guys dug in and they got the win. Like, we needed that win and we wanted that win, and I think that play, like, everyone on the team's pissed off, and then so, they dig in extra hard and make it happen. I was glad to see them get rewarded. It looks good on our guys. I thought it was an unbelievable effort, especially down the stretch.
Are you surprised you got such a weak explanation from the referee?
No, and listen, this isn't against the two refs that called the game tonight. Like it's just like it's the inconsistency in that call. It seems pretty common sense to me, right? Like, what are you gonna it's hurt, the puck, he's hurt, the puck goes to the corner, he's not getting up, clearly not getting up. Just blow it dead. By the time that puck got cycled behind the net, it should have been called. So it's, when you're doing it for every other player on the ice, but you're not going to do it for the goalie, makes no sense to me.
Corey first.
Is it almost like a theme of this season that you have this like crazy, amazing comeback, and you also have another ridiculous injury? Like, it just seems like there's just a range of emotions after almost so many games this year like this.
Yeah, I mean, injuries are going to happen. Obviously, we've had more than our share. And, for me, it's about, getting our guys healthy and continuing to play with that type of heart. That's what we want to do. The habits, the heart. I didn't love our start, fine, but we scratch and claw our way back, and it's, at the end of the day, I'm really happy with what we did in the second half. It's another, feather in our guys' cap, the way they dug in to get the win, and we're going to have to continue to battle through injuries, obviously. There's guys missing, and we're just hoping that we get healthy for the right time and hopefully before the right time so we can get, a feel of what our group looks like, and we still haven't had it together. We're back up. I think it's now back up to 6 guys hurt, right? So, and we've been running at that 5 number all year long, and we just got to keep going.
Megan.
In talking about the concern for player safety, is there any course of action you can take to have the league?
Well, we'll call the league. After this presser, I'm sure I'll get a call from the league, but it's, I don't care. It's like that wasn't a difficult call tonight. And again, I'm not trying to pick on the 2 guys who were out there tonight. Any one of the 4 guys could just be looking at it and blow the whistle. And it's not just because it went in. It's just how long are you going to let it go? They talk about player safety. That's the most important thing. Well, if they pass it to the slot and someone hammers a one-timer in the back of his head, then what? It happened to Calvert in Winnipeg a couple years ago. He's bleeding all over the ice. He's down in the slot. They pass it to the point. They shoot another one off his back. And then they're like, we should have blew it dead. Well, it's too late after he takes 2 slap shots to the head. Just make the call. If they're going to blow it down on plays like that when guys go down in the neutral zone, but then they're not going to do it in the slot or with your goalie. Makes no sense.
From a viewer standpoint, this was a 3-hour action movie. From the bench, did it feel like that?
Yeah, except they're like a bad action movie that takes too long to get going for us. I thought, when we were down and we needed to start coming back, then our guys really dug in and we started to get to our game. I didn't hate our first period, but we give up an odd man rush, which we were really trying to prevent, and we gave up the power play goal, and we didn't get a lot going in the offensive zone. But I felt like if we got to our game that we'd have a chance to come back in, and eventually we did.
Your last one, go ahead.
You've seen Devontae's for years now shut down top players in the world. So when he makes a play like that in overtime, is that just?
Well, the defensive play was, great. Angles him, what he did leading up to that rush chance is what's impressive and what we know him for. And then to finish it off, great finish. I mean, that's a heck of an effort.
Was there any extra, I guess, frustration with the celebration that came after that goal, or was that not even a factor?
No, I didn't even look at it. I mean, I wasn't even paying attention.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, Coach.
I wanted to play the entire clip because Megan, I just looked at you during that and I said the part that just struck me was like he just stayed pissed. Like you would just tell that Jared Bednar was fuming when he walked in there to talk to us.
Yeah, he had a lot that he wanted to say, and he was very unfiltered. He knows that anything that he says in this post-game presser is fair game for the league to talk to him about. And he's aware of that every second of that post-game presser. And he says it with his full chest. And even today, he mentioned that he did talk with the league. He didn't want to go into too much detail, that it felt like it was an agree to disagree kind of thing. Like he shared some things on his end, and the league shared some things on their end, and he kind of understood some of the things they were saying, but it ultimately still ended up with an agree to disagree. And that makes me very angry on behalf of Jared Bednar, because this needs to result in a review of the rule. It's a flawed rule, and it's going to leave more players unprotected. So I don't care about the goal against or changing anything about the Buffalo game.
Well, and let me just point out too that was, at least my take on it, was the same way that Jared Bednar felt. I'm less concerned about the goal going in. Like, yeah, obviously I'm sure that matters to him to some extent. Especially they lost that game on that goal. So I'm sure that matters to him to an extent. He's the head coach of the team. He's paid to win games. But he was very adamant several times in that presser. This is a player safety issue. I don't even remember. I don't even think he mentioned the goal itself. Play should have been blown dead. They should have never gotten a chance to shoot the puck was the issue.
And he even brings up the imminent scoring chance argument a little bit, that he would have understood that a little more if the puck was right there the whole time and goes in that way. But because it goes to the corner unclaimed for at least there's a span of 5 full seconds, which in hockey is a long time, where that puck goes to the corner between Benson falling on Wedgewood and him writhing in pain at the back of the net, to Benson then claiming that puck from the corner, skating it around the back of the net. That's 5 full seconds of the refs to see Wedgewood unable to get up, writhing in pain, back of the net. That's what frustrates me about people who might give the officials, all who have eyeballs on it, some room. Like, well, maybe they couldn't see that it was a serious injury. What about that? Does not scream a serious injury.
Well, so I was just that was what I was going to say, is goaltenders in particular. I just feel like even when they get hurt, they lose a piece of equipment. Goaltenders are just, like, they're all crazy. Scott Wedgewood's got, he's a goalie through and through.
Yeah.
Those dudes battle. They compete to just try to get anything they can in front of a puck. The fact that Scott Wedgewood was
doesn't immediately pop up.
Right. Or at least even try to find where the puck is. Like, it's like, yeah, he's hurt. He's obviously hurt.
That's quite a sell job.
Right.
5 seconds committed to the pain instead of just getting up and trying to defend the net, because the puck isn't there at that point. And so if I'm the goaltender, like, okay, well, the puck's not in the back of the net yet. He's not even thinking in that way.
Well, and the thing that I don't like about the, and I know we're paraphrasing, the agree to disagree, with Jared Bednar and the league. For me, it's not even about like we need to review the rule per se, but it's just like this shouldn't be a moment where you agree to disagree. Like, this should have been a moment where the league came out and said, yep, that play should have been blown dead. They don't have to make that statement publicly. I just like, I don't love the fact that the league is just like blindly based on that. Obviously we're not, ultra privy to the conversation necessarily, but like, I just don't love the fact that it's like, we'll defend the ref pretty much whatever call they make. We'll have we'll back them up.
Which makes the lack of clarity around the rule even that much more problematic, because
it makes it okay for the inconsistency.
Well, the worst case scenario is, okay, the ref gets it wrong and someone gets grievously injured, career ending. I'm being dramatic.
No, but I know what you mean.
And you're just going to say, well, they got it wrong. Oopsie daisy.
Well, I honestly think the Matt Calvert issue, or the Matt Calvert example, excuse me, is the best example that you can draw on. This is a player who's down bleeding out of the ear, and you don't blow the whistle till a second puck goes off his back. It's like that could have been like, that's a real scenario where a player could be injured to the point where it's season-ending, career, in jeopardy type thing, because you didn't blow the whistle because, okay, the other team had a scoring chance. And then I don't remember the exact example that Jared Bednar used, but there was another one not that long ago where Cale Makar, he said he's coming downhill, about to step into a one-timer, and they blew it dead because they deemed it wasn't safe because there was a player who was down who could have been hit by the puck. The Avs had an imminent scoring opportunity, and the refs said, hey, there's a player seriously hurt that is in the line of fire. And I don't remember what the exact game was, but I remember the instance, and I remember thinking like, oh, that's frustrating if you're Cale Makar, but there's a player in the way who's injured.
There's a reason for erring on the side of caution.
Right,
and
right.
as it's currently written, there's no need for refs to feel that way, and that's a huge problem.
And look, now here is the other thing that I do think. If you would have blown the play dead and then 15 seconds later felt like Scott Wedgewood was faking it, the refs should be able to get together in conference and say, that's a delay of game penalty on the Avalanche. The goaltender could have gotten back up, but stayed down, whatever.
Yeah.
Like if you think it was that egregious, I don't have any issue with the refs being able to get together in conference and say, hey, no, that wasn't a real injury. That was, a goalie trying to hit. They do the same thing when the defensive team or the goaltender bumps into the net and it comes off its moorings. They get together, talk. What did you see? Did that look intentional to you? From my angle, it looked like he skated in on purpose. No, I thought it was good. On purpose? All right, 3 of us said on purpose. It's a delay game. It's that easy.
It stresses me out too that it's so obvious with a delay of game penalty, like puck out of zone in your own end. All right, that could be a strategy if left undisciplined.
Yep.
We're going to deter you from doing that by calling it. But the difference here with this delay of game is there's an obvious consequence of what if you're wrong, though? Like, what if they're actually just hurt? Whereas with, delay of game, there isn't really that alternative side of it where someone could be grievously hurt. And that's why I don't get where the priorities are, that it's pretty easy and cut and dry with a delay of game, but it's not with a goaltender who might actually be hurt or isn't. And if he isn't, delay of game. It's pretty cut and dry, and it can be.
Well, and again, I also think Jared Bednar's, example of what if that was a more dangerous shot? So what had the Sabres? Well, and then, sorry, I'm talking in my own head to myself. What if that's a more dangerous shot, right? Like, what if that's a one-timer from Dahlin? And then the second part of that is the question that he asked of where do you draw the line? Okay, I've always been under the impression if it's an imminent scoring threat, Jared Bednar even alluded to that. Yeah, if you're hacking away at the puck in the crease and it's loose, what do you want the ref to do? That puck went to the corner. It's cycled behind the net. Okay, so had Buffalo then cycled that out high and gone D to D, is that long enough for him to be down? That you understand that he's actually injured? Or is it still, well, he could be faking it and we're just not sure? Well, the Sabres have possession. Like, where do you draw the line? And I guess that's more of my question of if what happened immediately after Scott Wedgewood went down doesn't constitute as not an imminent scoring threat, what does get the play stopped if a goalie's down and out? You know what I mean? Like,
it's another subjective thing that is too open-ended and with no consequence for getting it wrong. But there is real consequence to a player and his well-being, no matter what.
Correct me. Oh, damn it. I lost my train of thought because this one came up, or I remember this as well. I believe it was in the Stanley Cup final when Darcy Kemper's helmet came off and they didn't stop the play and the puck went in. Do you remember that one?
I do. And I just don't really remember the details around it.
It was a similar thing. It was kind of a scramble in front of the net, but there was a good 1.5 before it went in from the time his helmet came off to the time the puck was shot in. And I remember the Avs being very upset about that as well. Now I remembered, correct me if I'm wrong, is there any verbiage in the rule that designates player versus goaltender?
Kind of, but what's interesting is the goaltender section is the 8.2 and the injury one is 8.1, and the goaltender 8.2 section follows it, and it just talks about how to properly substitute a goalie in the case of an injury, but it doesn't talk about any differences around how the goalie gets injured. And so it seems, by the way that I read it, that the 8.1 section and talking about a player being injured applies to everybody. And then the specifications around goaltending is just what officials need to do in substituting an injured goaltender. And so that's another area where it's treated differently for goalies, but it's also not really clearly defined differently.
I almost wonder if the league, how you address this is, do you need to put in specific parameters for a goaltender, because they are in 99.9% of situations going to be in the line of fire.
Right. And they're the ones most likely to fake the injury. That's why I think this is being written in this way. You know, if there's an imminent scoring chance, no call. Unless the refs deem it serious enough. But we're not going to tell anyone what serious enough actually looks like. And I think it's all with goalies in mind, but it's not clear. But you're right. It should be, because the nature of the position is a little bit different in that they are directly in line of fire and they're probably the most likely to fake it.
And like, I don't agree with the argument of the, you know, what you were calling out earlier of like, well, no one's died from a leg injury.
I hated this.
Well, and where I'm going with that is like, I can understand that type of argument for, you know, a player goes down and looks like he breaks his ankle, and then the other team goes the other way on a 2-on-1. Yeah, you can let him stay down behind the play for a few seconds, well behind the play, as the rush goes the other way. I don't have an issue with that, because it's something that, you know, isn't a timely. You don't need to get him off and get him medical attention that second. You can let it play out for a few seconds. Then once that scoring opportunity plays out, you blow the play dead. Let that player get to the bench. Let them get medical care. It's very rare that that's going to happen in a situation like this with a goaltender. If they're going down, it's because there's action around them and they're in danger, you know, in the context that we're talking about. Like, they're in the line of fire.
And so outside of the injury category is an equipment category where it talks about, you know, if a goaltender's mask is popped off, how the play is stopped then. Why is it stopped? Because they're vulnerable.
Right.
Is a goalie laying defenseless on the ice not also vulnerable? Like, if we can recognize why you need to care about a vulnerable goalie having his mask pop off, can we not see why it's also dangerous for them to lie defenseless on the ice?
Yeah, 100%. And again, being dramatic, I was looking at it, and I mean, like, he doesn't wear a gobble. Weird bounces, that could be a puck that hits him under the mask, you know, all kinds of stuff. He's laying in a vulnerable position where not all that padding that he's got is going to help. Yeah, there's just a lot that went into that.
Yeah, you can tell I'm still angry about it. I think we're both angry about it.
Well, I'm angry in the same way that Jared Bednar is, that it's like, you know, we sit here and try to do a job and we try to give context, and we have people that ask us for explanations and what we think and how we see it should, you know, how we think it should be done. And like, it's just hard for me, because it's like, this seems pretty obvious, but based on the explanation Jared Bednar got from the officials, based on the lack of transparency we get from the league, and based on what it sounds like Jared Bednar's conversation was with the NHL, I don't know what to think. And that to me is the frustrating part.
It signaled to me that not much is going to change. And to me, this is the kind of thing that should be the turning point in the rule that prompts the league to reevaluate it and see how they can modify it to make it a little clearer and a little better to better protect players.
More consistent.
Because the next time we hear about something like this, to your point, it's going to be more serious. The next time that we have this kind of conversation around it. And it shouldn't take it getting more serious from where it's at right now, because it's already a pretty serious concern around Wedgewood, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to wait until it's too far to be taken back to start having that conversation about changing the rules.
Well-
Let this be the learning lesson.
Well, and let me even give a maybe a slightly less extreme example. And I'm not saying that to be funny. I'm saying it in terms of like, I see this being something that plays out. It can very easily play out. That was a game 6 last night. You know what I mean? Like of a playoff series. And there's one team fighting to stay alive, and your goalie gets fallen on, however that happens, a serious injury, they go down and the other team scores to win the game and win the series, and your year's done. Like, that to me is a scenario where it's like, yeah, you don't want to end up in that situation either, where suddenly the league is having to look a team, Jared Bednar, a coach, whoever, in the eye and say, sorry, your season's done. That whistle probably should have been blown because, yeah, your guy has a broken fibula. He wasn't faking it. Like, again, like that's not from the injury standpoint. That's from the quality of the product on the ice.
You're right. It's a less dramatic example, but the overarching theme being, don't let this be a lesson.
Exactly, right.
That's learned an even harder way.
Yes, and I also want to point out, not that I think that yours is something that couldn't play out. Yours is what the league should be scared of. Mine is the example of, you don't want to get caught in this situation.
Totally.
You know, you don't want that look. Yours is the example of like, yeah, you better pray that this doesn't play out, because then it's a whole different set of issues. Any last thoughts for today before we head into the weekend?
No.
You will be at the game tomorrow. You and Mark, so we'll have all kinds of coverage coming from Ball Arena. Nice 5 p.m. start. No morning skate, Megan.
I'll be there.
All right, that's going to do it. She's Meghan Angley. I'm Jesse Montano. That's Chloe behind the glass. You guys didn't get to see her today, but Chloe's back there. You know what Chloe looks like. She's the best. Thank you guys all so much for hanging out. Thanks for jumping in the chat, our super chats from today. Great to see all you guys. First week of 2025 is done, Megan. It's in the books.
Oh, what?
I mean, we only got like 2 days. It started Wednesday, but
Okay.
I mean, we're heading like first Friday into the weekend, all around. Yeah. That's going to do it, guys. Thanks so much. Make sure you guys are dialed into all things Guerrilla Sports tomorrow, as we'll be bringing you guys everything from Ball Arena. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. Bye.
My computer died.